Okay, trying to take my mind off the situation again. I want to thank everybody who donated or even prayed. Um, again, I, the money got to her bank. I was able to get it there. Um, I've gotten a call from her yet, which means she's probably still in the hospital. Thank God for that. You really showed your charity to somebody that you did not know. Um, thank you very much. And as always, I have on the image of the Theotokos in Chicago. But I wanted to address something because I've heard this before, and about fascism. Now, the girl you helped is a not quite legal mestiza Mexican who can't speak English, right? Who hopefully I will be married to one day. And people say nationalism is fascism or is racism. How could you be a nationalist and date somebody who has a lot of Aztec or Mexico or Mayan blood in them and is from another country? This is my reply, and I had to write this as a reply, and I'll just read it. That nationalism has nothing to do with race. And I despise when people say white nationalism or black nationalism, because what nation is that? Were the communist Vietnamese fascists? Was the Provisional IRA, who were leftists, fascists? Were the Sandinistas of Nicaragua fascists? Were the FMLN of El Salvador fascists? The answer to all those rhetorical questions is no. Yet every one of those groups were nationalists. Now, whether you agree with the only contention somebody might have is Vietnam, because the South, it was those were called the nationalist forces, right? But both were fighting for Vietnam for the whole thing because they both thought they knew it was better. But it's indisputable. The IRA, right, which was um, a left wing socialist group, right, were nationalists. They weren't national socialists. The Sandinistas had communists among them, as did the FMLN. Sandinistas were a popular front, right? The FMLN were mostly Roman Catholics, and they had communists among them. I mean, the Sandinistas. There were right-wing Sandinistas, there were left-wing Sandinistas, there were communist Sandinistas. They were trying to get rid of Somoza and America's imperialism because America had basically run roughshod over the will of the people. Nationalism is the belief that um, the people of a land, not the race, whoever was born in the land, right? They should govern that land and they should be in control of their destiny and not be a colony of another country, whether like an official colony like the British had, or like the ones that the United States had, the certain banana republics, whether it was Cuba during the 50s, where the mafia was allowed to run roughshod, and how the United States basically stopped, took the democratically elected guy out of power and put Batista back into power. Now, I hate communism. I hate Castro. I hate Che Guevara. But nobody knew that Castro was a communist. He denied it, and he said we're going to have elections, and then he said, well, no, I'm president for life. Um, he didn't have the best interest in mind. He was not a nationalist. He was a tin pot dictatorship, and he was a internationalist communist. Um, with the Tibetan freedom movement is a nationalist movement. Um, I mean, it's ludicrous. Okay, the resistance to the fascists, the Italian fascists in Ethiopia, were the Ethiopians fascists? Because those were the nationalist forces trying to kick out the colonialists. Uh, Fascists and communists and imperialists, by definition, cannot be nationalists. Because a nationalist is somebody who believes that the people of the country, the indigenous people, should rule the country. And people will say, well, you're against illegal immigration. Well, hold on, this has nothing. What are you talking about? If you're against nationalism, right, then why was it wrong for um, the English, the French, the Spanish, and the Portuguese to come over to the Americas and take over? Because when the Incas tried to repel the Spanish, they were the nationalists, right? They wanted to keep their culture intact. They didn't want this new culture coming in and destroying their way of life. So I guess the Incas were the fascists, right? They were the bad guys. When the five civilized tribes of the Cherokee, Chickasaw, the Creek, the Seminole won their court case to stay in the Appalachian Mountains, in their homeland, in their ancestral homeland, I guess they were fascists, right? Because that's where their nations were. They were they were five nations that wanted to stay on their ancestral. So I guess Andrew Jackson was the good guy, right? He wasn't the fascist. It must have been Cherokee. When Hitler and Stalin invaded Poland, I guess those Poles were fascists, right? It wasn't the Nazis and the communists. When Belgium was overrun by Germany twice in two world wars, I guess they were fascists, right? Because they didn't want to be colonized and their sovereignty destroyed. I mean, when the Kurds want their own independent state and don't want to be abused by Shia or Sunni or other Arab cultures because it's different from them, or killed by ISIS, I guess the Kurds are fascists, right? People throw around this term fascist, and then we see these idiots. I'm a white nationalist. Well, there's 8 races in Europe, 8 indigenous races, right? You have the Greeks, you have the Latinos, you have the Basques, you have the Celts, you have the Nordic/Germanic people, you have the Slavs, just to name a few. Um, and then you have subgroups like gypsies and stuff like that. Um, the And if you want to say white nationalists, well, if you're talking about Aryans, you're going to have to include people from Iran as well as people from northern India. Um, and in the United States, on a job application, it says white, non-Hispanic, which pisses me off because I'm white Hispanic. But under that, it says European, North African, or Middle Eastern. So Arabs are considered white here. These ideas of race are stupid. And as for black nationalists, um, the Eurasian community, right? The people from Europe, Asia, and all their ancestors invented most of the things. I mean, we live in a multicultural technological world. So how the hell are you going to be a black nationalist? What are you only going to use inventions that black people had, and of which tribe? I mean, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to use anything of the white man. Um, so I guess computers. I mean, we get pants, right? I don't have Germanic blood in me, but trousers, pants, that came from the barbarians that destroyed Rome. Now, you guys, I'm open about my racial ancestry. It's Irish, Arab, and Latino, Hispanic Latino. Because there's Italians, Portuguese, and Spanish are Latinos. They're just not Latin Americans. Um, and I probably have Native American blood in me from South America. Um, but can I believe in nationalism because I don't believe in colonialism. But I don't believe in these idiots that call themselves white nationalists or black nationalists, or that confuse nationalism with fascism. Fascism is diametrically opposed to nationalism because fascism is imperialistic. Oh, I guess you could have a form of fascism that's not imperialistic. Franco did it. But was Franco really a fascist, or did he just kind of co-opt the Falange for his own purpose? But the Nazis were not nationalists. They wanted to destroy a lot of German culture, and they did, and they wanted to create it in its own image. They were burning down churches. They were destroying any German art that wasn't approved by this crazy Thule society. Hitler actually had to tell Himmler to stop going around and doing archaeological digs because guess what? The Germanic peoples were less technologically advanced than the Romans, who had olive skin. When the Germans were living as kind of like the Native American, when the Germans were living in nomadic Iron Age societies, you had great cities of marble in Rome, Persia, and India. So it was embarrassing because the Germanic peoples were the last peoples to be civilized in Europe, right? I mean, think about it. The Vikings and the Northern Germans, they were the last ones to even have the alphabet and a functioning alphabet. I'm not talking about runes. I mean, before Ireland had Greek, and they had schools that were kept the Greek and Latin writings still alive when the Dark Ages hit, and the Germans caused the Dark Ages. So this nationalist crap. If you're a nationalist, good. Don't be a damn racist, and don't look to people like Hitler. And there is no such thing as white nationalism or black nationalism. Hate to break it to you. If you're a Mexican nationalist, I salute you because you should be like the Cristeros and fight the corrupt government in Mexico and install the constitution that the Cristeros wanted to install and have freedom. It was the piñata in Nicaragua was terrible, but the Sandinistas were great. I mean, look at the horror that the School of the Americas caused in El Salvador. So no, I'm not for imperialism. That's why I don't like communism. I don't like fascism, and I don't like people misusing the term nationalism. All right, peace to you. And that's why there's no contradiction between me wanting to marry somebody who's, guess what, is of my same culture. Roman Catholic, extreme emphasis on family, believes in traditional gender roles. But she has a little bit more Native American in her, and I have some Arab in me and some Irish in me. Besides that, ludicrous. It's ludicrous. People need to educate themselves on what nationalism actually is. You're a fascist. Well, we're the FMLN, we're the Sandinistas, was the Provisional IRA, was the communist, was Ho Chi Minh. Were all the resistance fighters in World War II that were fighting against the Nazis and the Soviets? I mean, come on.